Let me start with a question. Where do you think there is more inequality? Is it in Silicon Valley or is it in Burundi? Exactly! The answer, of course, is Silicon Valley. But this is not actually necessarily bad news. For example, imagine that you work as a systems engineer at the Cisco offices in San Jose. You can make around $7,500 a month. Not bad, right? Well, if you compare that with your friend who works as a software engineer at Google, you're going to feel like a beggar. Somebody in that position can easily make more than $11,000 a month. And of course, all of that is pretty much pennies if you compare it to the earnings of your neighbors Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, or any of the other tycoons living in the area. In other words, anybody would feel poor living amongst the people with the world's largest fortunes. And yes, I can guess what you're thinking. I mean, surely it's not so bad to live in a city where people are making $150,000 a year on average. Alright, so I can probably guess what you're thinking right now. You're probably thinking, well, living in a city where poor people make $150,000 a year is gotta be a pretty good place to live, right? Well, yes, but as we say, things aren't always as good as they seem. In an area with so much concentrated wealth, well, what do you think happens? Yep. Prices go absolutely sky high. For example, how much do you think you'd have to pay to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in Mountain View? Mountain View, by the way, is where Google has its headquarters. And do note here, we're not talking about a big metropolis like New York City or London. This town's population would fit comfortably in the middle of somewhere like Iowa. Alright, so that being said, how much do you think you should pay? $500 a month? $1,000 a month? $2,000 a month? Well, after several Google searches, the cheapest rent we could find was $3,400. The cheapest! In general, houses in Silicon Valley are 60% more expensive than elsewhere in America. And I know, with a salary of $11,000 a month, you're more than happy to pay $3,500 a month in rent, right? Well, absolutely. But let's just think for a moment. We gotta think about, well, what's Silicon Valley really famous for? And it's famous for entrepreneurs. The main appeal of Silicon Valley is not working for Facebook, it's for starting your own Facebook. So now think about it. Would you really want to start a company in such an expensive place? Maybe not. Which explains this.
The tech elite are abandoning Silicon Valley in droves because of groupthink and out-of-control living costs.
Yeah, you heard that right. In the year 2017, Silicon Valley had negative net migration for the first time in decades. This means there were more people leaving than coming in, and this is surprising if we take into account that this area of the world was growing like crazy since the year 1950. Take Mountain View, for example. In 1950, this town was no bigger than 6,000 inhabitants. Now, it has more than 81,000. And the same happened with the rest of the area. Nonetheless, according to a survey, half of the residents are seriously considering leaving because of the high cost of living. Some of them have already left, and among them is the man you see here.
Peter Thiel leaves Silicon Valley for Los Angeles.
In case you've never heard of him, Peter Thiel is something like Silicon Valley's Santa Claus. Along with Elon Musk, he's one of the founders of PayPal. After that, he became a venture capitalist, and we'd say he's basically Facebook's godfather. At least he was the one who put serious money into this company when it was taking its first baby steps. But the question now is, why are there so many people leaving Silicon Valley? Is the cost of living really the only reason, or are there others? And most importantly, is this the end of Silicon Valley as we know it? Well, today we're going to answer all of those questions, but before we do, let's take a look back at the history.
No country for entrepreneurs.
Now, in another VisualPolitik video, we told you how a Silicon Valley startup gets financed. We talked about the so-called startup financing cycle. And of course, Silicon Valley is the best place on earth to find people ready to bet on your idea. As another bonus, this place is the Disneyland of skilled workforces. If you want to start a company that manufactures self-driving cars, you need people who've mastered the latest technologies. And the reality is you ain't gonna find them in the middle of Wyoming. The most talented people, they gather in Silicon Valley, and they're ready to hire or get hired. So, well, what's the problem? Well, these talented people you would like to hire for your brand new startup are now too busy earning $150,000 a year at Google. And yeah, your idea, it might be disruptive and it might be innovative, but you can't compete with the salaries and especially the stability that a giant like Google can provide.
You're supposed to have a startup in a garage if the garage costs millions of dollars. Ajay Royan from Mithril Capital, talking to The Economist.
But this is not the end of the story. Remember, California has the highest taxes in the entire United States, and things, they don't just stop there. You see, in America, states have plenty of autonomy to raise or lower taxes and can even decide how they want to collect those taxes. For example, the state of Texas doesn't have an income tax. Most of the taxes they collect are through indirect taxation. These are the taxes that you pay on top of the things you buy. California, they're the opposite. They have very little value-added tax, and most of the collection comes from workers' salaries and especially capital gains. In other words, if you're an investor and you're making a lot of money this year, you'd better get your wallet ready because California is going to charge you more than anywhere else. And this is not exactly great news when you consider that Silicon Valley is what it is because of venture capitalists. Nonetheless, this is not the only reason why people are leaving the valley. For example, Peter Thiel hasn't left because of state taxes, otherwise he wouldn't have gone to Los Angeles, which is in California. The truth is that a lot of people like him believe that Silicon Valley has lost all of the diversity that it used to be famous for.
Peter Thiel. Silicon Valley has become a one-party state.
Basically, Peter Thiel supported Donald Trump during the campaign, and apparently this kind of thing is not very well regarded in the Valley where liberal thinking is king. And, well, truth be told, there are many reasons why in Silicon Valley people are not big fans of Donald Trump, and, well, let's explore those reasons.
H-1B.
Do you remember when I told you that the greatest amount of talent on the planet is located in Silicon Valley? Well, I didn't misspeak. I did mean planet and not just America. This means that 57% of the people working for the tech companies in the Valley come from other countries. Yes, this is an industry with more immigrants than locals. And, well, how do these immigrants get into America? Well, that's easy. They use the famous H-1B visa.
Basically, this is a visa that allows you to stay on U.S. territory for between 3 and 6 years. In order to get it, you must be hired by a company that can prove that your skills are both necessary to its operations and that those skills cannot be provided by domestic workers. If you're fired, you have 1 month to find another job. If you can't find another job, you must leave America.
Of course, this visa is requested by the employer, and the government can deny it if they want to. And most importantly, these visas are limited. They can issue a maximum of 65,000 in the entire country. As you can imagine, a good share of them go to those workers immigrating to Silicon Valley. For a better understanding, just in the year 2016, Google and Apple hired more than 5,000 people through this process. And of course, you can probably work out what I'm going to say next. Donald Trump ain't exactly a fan of the H-1B.
Trump's Hire American order makes it harder to get H-1B visas.
Now, I don't know about you, but back when Donald Trump took office, we made a video where we explained all of the powers that the president has. These are the things that he can do without having to get a vote in Congress. Border control is one of them, and if you saw that video, which is actually one of the first we ever made on this channel, you will remember that Obama was just as restrictive on immigration as Donald Trump. But the devil here is very much in the details, and one of the details is this H-1B visa. It's in fact a very small detail that makes a big problem in Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley stalls hiring of foreign tech workers. Employer requests to interview candidates fall 37% on Trump immigration fears.
According to some media, many of these tech companies might open new offices in countries like Canada, where it's easier to hire immigrants. But so far, we don't have any data as to whether this is actually happening or if it's ever really going to happen. Nonetheless, the question we can already start answering is this: where could the next tech capital of the world be? Well, we're going to tell you right now.
From Palo Alto to Shenzhen,
If you Google it, you'll discover that almost every city wants to become the new Silicon Valley. You just need to find a journalist who finds a couple of computer programmers working together, and boom, you've already got an article titled The Silicon Valley of...
Insert
Name of your city or region.
here.
For example, there are lots of wishful articles that quote Berlin as a startup creation hub. Even the German government has opened offices in Silicon Valley so that German entrepreneurs can find investors. But the truth is that almost no company has managed to seduce those big venture capital funds in California, at least for now. So the big question now is, how do we know if a city is really becoming a technological capital? Well, one way of measuring this would be the number of unicorns that have been born here. And so you now might be asking, well, what's a unicorn, beside, of course, the mythical beast? Well, a unicorn is a startup that ends up with a valuation of over $1 billion. In 2017, 57 startups became unicorns, and from those 57 startups, 18 were not American. In fact, China was their country of origin. Yes, dear viewers, we're talking about companies like DJI, which manufactures drones, and Alibaba, which we talked about here on VisualPolitik previously. And it explains headlines like this one.
China's latest growth market, venture capital.
For example, Sequoia Capital is a VC fund born in Silicon Valley, and they have already opened several offices in China. And I know what you're thinking, does this really mean that China is going to outshine America? Well, the answer is no. Other cities like Mumbai in India and Tel Aviv in Israel have also attracted a lot of money from VC funds. You might have heard of a company called Wix.
This is a company that allows you to create websites very easily. Well, they're from Israel. And though the country has no unicorns, Israel does have more than 2% of all of the world's venture capital. That might not seem like a lot of money, but it is if we take into account the fact that Israel has a smaller population than New York City.
In summary, there is no clear alternative to Silicon Valley. Even now, with the exodus we talked about, Silicon Valley still gets more than half of the money that's invested into startups. And chances are they're going to continue to hold that sway over this industry for a long time. So what's the difference then? Well, now there are many other places where good ideas can prosper. In other words, 30 years ago, if you had a good idea and you wanted to see it grow, there was virtually one place to go. Now you've got many more, and well, this is always good news. So now the question is, do you think Silicon Valley has reached its peak in terms of growth, or do you believe this exodus will stop soon and that the valley will start growing again? Well, please leave your answer in the comments section below. Also, visit reconsidermedia.com, the podcast that provided the vocals in this episode that were not mine. And as always, don't forget we publish brand new videos every week, so subscribe to VisualPolitik and hit that bell button so you won't miss any posts. Also, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. And as always, I'll see you next time.
And if you want to learn more about politics and hear more of my lovely voice, don't forget to check out the Reconsider podcast at reconsidermedia.com. Reconsider is a podcast that challenges you to reconsider your views by providing context, but we don't do the thinking for you.